Hey, y'all. What's up? It's your girl, Miss Mimi, aka Mimi the Great. I am having technical difficulties. Uh, if I freeze, just tune back in because I will be right back. Um, anyway, today is August the 15th. In case you guys have, it is mid-month already. Listen, Christmas is gonna be here in just a second, so um, I'm ready for my gifts. If you are, right? Uh, It is Saturday, August 15th. And listen, as I'm waiting on my guest to reappear, how you guys doing? It has been an interesting week, a wonderful week. Met some new people this week as I was out and about doing some things, acquired some things, and no. Awesome. Here we
Oh,
go.
okay, there we go.
Yes. See how this stuff works? We was doing fine until it was time. So we are already live. I was welcoming in everyone. Happy Saturday. So, how was you guys' week? Anybody can go
Long,
first.
Right.
long.
Oh
We
yeah,
had a
because
very
this
long
is the
week.
week that you guys are going into school starting back up, correct?
Yes, professional development. We're the teachers.
Yes. Look, and my hat's out to you because I already know what had to go on in the classroom when I was in school. I can only imagine now. Because now, I don't think you get as many parents as we did when I was in school that would pop up.
But we
You
I
get
do.
them.
agree. I agree. There aren't as many, correct?
Hmm. You get some, yes?
Right.
We got some.
Yeah. Yeah, mine didn't mind retching me up at registration, which, with this thing going on, we can't, probably don't have registration is the same. But,
Oh no.
when we were in school, it was go from table to table.
Mm-hmm.
My mom didn't had no problems with retching me up by my ear, my neck, pinching me and come on over here and introducing me like I wanted to be known like that. This is my child and this is me. If you have
Mm-hmm.
a problem, handle that and then call me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
Right.
So and she had no problems with taking her lunch break and popping up if
Mm-hmm.
it looked like,
Yeah.
smelled like, if I thought I looked like I was gonna act right when I left school for
Right.
school that morning. Yeah, she would. Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
love those parents.
Yeah. Anywho, so who wants to go first? I know everybody said your week was long. What all was your week? Did your weeks entail going into getting ready for school?
Right now, for me, I teach theater arts, so it's a matter of learning how to put my content online, and doing everything that our district, has for us to do, so that it's easier for parents to navigate, regardless of what grade their student is in. But it's a lot of work. A lot of work.
Yes. I know for me, very similarly, the amount of information and the amount of intention that the district has put around making sure that this semester of learning or this amount of time that we'll be on with each other virtually, they want to make sure that this learning is rigorous, that students have a very clear way of how they are going to interact with their teachers, and making sure that we're providing opportunities for, connecting with students and parents as needed. And so there are a lot of different tools that our district has compiled for us to learn and be able to execute. And so it was very impressive how they put this together so that it could work a bit more seamlessly than it did last term.
Mhm.
However, it was a lot of information to kind of have to pull in and then recreate your normal first year plan in a virtual fashion. So there was just a lot of cross-referencing, a lot of opportunities to build and grow, and it took a lot of mental energy that I don't know that I was prepared to expend.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm in a similar boat as Joy. I teach elementary music, so I have 6 grade levels that I teach, and I'm having to put all these lessons for 6 separate grade levels online. And the same thing as LaTreva said about, getting a lot of information. Everyone that's been saying, oh, teachers who are working from home and virtually aren't doing that much work. I have worked 65 hours this week and have a lot more to do to be ready for students to start doing virtual lessons on Monday. I'm working more now from home than I did when I was in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have it for the people in the back. What? I'm just saying, in case they missed it, because I've heard that a lot. Another friend of mine who's also a teacher, teaches special ed in Georgia, that's been the consensus with the parents is, why are they getting paid? They're not doing anything. We have to do all the work, not knowing and or understanding the back work that it is that takes place and who's responsible for that back work. Like you said, setting up all the information into the system so that the parents don't have to have such a headache. Yes, it's a headache because a lot of the parents probably haven't seen that stuff since, I'm scared to even look at a math book now. Math was one of my favorite subjects. But yeah, that's been one of the things that has been discussed is, why are you guys still getting paid? Because the parents feel like they have to do everything, not knowing everything that you guys have to do to.
I think, if I may, I think what people don't realize is when you do true homeschool, that is you as the parent creating a lesson based off of a curriculum and then teaching it to your children. What parents are going to need to do now is what they should have been doing always, which is supporting their students' learning, because the teachers are still doing the lessons, will be there to give the lessons. The parents just have to be there to support. Now I'm speaking middle and high school. For the elementary student parents, I feel for y'all. I do. That's gonna be a little bit.
My parents at my campus were just completely floored in the spring about trying to figure out how to get their their 4 or 5-year-olds pre-K kindergarten on the computer, figuring out how to get them to do it. If they're on a phone, they're fine because it's all very touch screen and visual. But the second they have to get at a keyboard and figuring out letters and typing, it becomes a completely different situation for those kids. And then throw in, they're doing math, reading, social studies, science, and then they have the specials courses as well, art, music, PE, and just trying to get all of that to the kids in an efficient way that makes sense.
Treva, anything to add?
I think for me, the thing that pained me the most through this this unfolding that's happened over the summer was the way that parents and teachers were pitted against each other. And we are on opposite sides in a battle. And I could not wrap my mind around the fact that, and it I'll be honest, it felt like parents. It felt like parents lost sight of who it was that we were all really supposed to be focused on and how we actually focus on them in a way that will inconvenience everybody, because this is an inconvenient truth. And so the reality is that it felt like I was being attacked as a teacher. I felt like I had to bond arms with my other teacher friends, which was awesome because I am someone who feels like teachers are often advocated for. I feel like we are taken for granted and have been taken for granted for a very long time. And this is the first opportunity that we were courageous enough to say that this is where the buck stops. And like, if I am going to potentially lose my life because I have to teach a child, like I am going to choose me. And it was hurtful to see that there were parents who really questioned whether or not we should have been doing that. Like, it was illogical in a way that I thought was really insidious, and it really hurt, because I'm like, you guys lean on teachers for so much. And now, I had to do a lot of hard work just to get myself ready to interact with some parents. And I can't say that I saw any of my parents say anything rude or nasty or unsupportive. Mm-hmm. But the atmosphere that was created made me feel like I've got to pull up a wall. I've got to put up a guard. They're going to be looking for any and everything that I'm doing wrong to slam me. Mm-hmm. And that's another level of anxiety that I'm experiencing that I have not previously experienced. And mm-hmm. That's exhausting. Like, that was a lot of the energy that was expended over the last week, in addition to the actual man hours that I just wasn't used to putting out there. And it's, that's an area where there's going to be some healing that's going to have to happen between those two populations, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always a difficult time for anyone to have to say, hi, I'm a human, please treat me as so.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot of that as teachers. And I mean, I can't even imagine what the kids are thinking through all right. this. Like, my parent is so desperate to get me into a school building, and the kids know what's going on around them with COVID-19. Mm-hmm. They see, my friend's parent got sick, my friend's grandparent died, and my mom is desperately trying to get me in this classroom. And I have to wonder if the kids are just becoming traumatized, worrying if their parents actually care about their safety, mm-hmm. because so many parents are pushing so hard. And then on the flip side, the parents who are saying, no, I can't send my child into the school building, I want to make sure they stay safe, like, are also kind of getting vilified for right. that choice as well by other parents. Right. And it's just incredibly contentious and incredibly difficult as a teacher, feeling both sides of that. And my colleagues who are parents as well as teachers as well are, looking at things from 5 different angles and not sure what to do.
Right. And so before we go any further, I want to introduce my guest, because we kind of jumped in, and that's great. I love it. I didn't want to break it up to introduce y'all. Just read the text. Just read at the bottom. That's who they is. But I'll be nice. Okay. LaTreva, I saw you. We have Samantha Pisarksi, right, May?
Yes.
Reading is fundamental. Elementary music teacher, as she said, of 11 years in Houston, community organizer, activist with a focus on education, equity, racial justice, and LGBTQ rights, which is awesome, and living with numerous chronic illnesses that are COVID-19 risk factors. What are some of those illnesses that you're living with?
I have high blood pressure. I have an autoimmune disorder that attacks my digestive system. I'm also considered under the BMI index as overweight, which is a COVID-19 factor. I also have breathing issues through severe allergies and asthma. So I have a lot stacked against me in terms of COVID risk factors, which makes potentially teaching in a classroom very, very scary.
Mm-hmm. And you would be also considered an extreme high risk, right?
Yes, mm-hmm. I would be.
Has anyone given ideas on how that would look like for you going back into the classroom? Will you will you have to stand in, because some teachers, I don't know how it is in classrooms now, but when I was in school, teachers walk back and forth. They walk,
oh, yeah.
in the classroom, depending on what you taught, and you teach music. So
yes, sing, dance, play, jump all the time, all around my classroom, and that's my day. Which in the COVID-19 world isn't feasible. My district is still trying to decide whether or not they're going to allow singing in elementary classrooms or choirs, or if they're going to allow band instruments to be played, because so many of them you blow into. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And trying to figure out, are we going to create too many droplets in the atmosphere of the classroom that could potentially spread this illness farther if anyone comes in and they happen to be, asymptomatic.
Mm-hmm.
Now my district is also starting for 4 weeks virtually. So I don't have to think about that as much until September. Mm-hmm. But it's something to think about. In the meantime, I have bought face mask upon face mask upon face mask. I am going to be getting a face shield as well. Mm-hmm. And I even bought, and I feel a little ridiculous talking about it, but I bought this thing that's like a wearable PVC pod that I could put on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it just shields around me because, I mean, I love my students more than anything, but at least once a week I get sneezed in my face by a 5-year-old because they're little, and so I bought this pod because I can't risk a child sneezing on me this school year.
And it's not really, and you'd be surprised how you say you felt kind of silly talking about it, but however, it is a necessary discussion, not only for you, but for so many other people who haven't heard anybody say anything, who probably don't even know where to go get such a thing. Where'd you get it from?
I got it sent the link by a friend of mine. Okay. I don't remember the company, but if you look up Shield Pod, SHIELD space POD on Google, then you should be able to find it.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that was money out of my pocket for something that could potentially help me.
And well, what I want to know too, is because in the beginning, when they first started talking about, we're not going to go to school, we aren't, school is going to be this until the end of the year. Some of the people, because like I said, most of my friends are in education, are teachers, have been teachers, are in admin levels now. So I get to hear a lot of the conversation. And to some degree, I felt like, and I could be wrong, the teachers didn't have a choice in the matter.
Which matter?
Going back to school, whether you wanted to go back to, we're going to be open. So see you when you get here.
Well, right now, I mean, they sent out a survey at the end of the summer to see how many people were comfortable coming back. Mm-hmm. So was the decision for us to go virtual based off that survey or the fact that we're in red? I don't know. But I would like to think that the survey had something to do with it, just to make my own self feel better. And I see the work that my district has done as far as filling in the gaps for school being closed, just feeding breakfast, lunch, dinner, So I want to believe that my district has taken those surveys into account. So my hope is that in 4 weeks, regardless of what TEA is going to do funding wise, those surveys will come out again, and once again, we will still be taken into account.
I'm in the district as Joy, and I can echo the same just gratitude for my district. From very early on, they were asking teachers' opinions, like from the survey she mentioned to, hey, we're having Zoom conversations about this, jump on, having breakout groups from that. Like they took it very seriously, and they engaged teachers in the process of even creating what they thought was going to be the first plan. And then to know that our superintendent was one of the first ones to say, this is what we're going to do for our teachers, because this is what we're going to do for our district, because it's the right thing to do, the right thing by teachers. Mm-hmm. And I don't want them to be put in harm's way. So we are going to stay virtual for this amount of time, before it even became something that more districts began to push back on. And so I am grateful for that leadership, because I've seen that there have been I won't say far more districts, but more districts than I would have expected, that are pushing the face-to-face in a way that makes it feel like you're going to do what I say if you want to keep a job. And we're in a pandemic and everybody wants to keep a job. It kind of feels like they're being strong-armed, and it has a really gross feeling to it when you look at it that way.
It does, and I'm not even, like I said, I'm not even on you guys' side. I'm on your side, but I'm not an actual teacher, and just listening to some of the ways that the stress that it has caused, the agitation, all of that. I wouldn't be surprised if every teacher across America is now considered PTSD worthy because like you said, Treva, earlier, it's caused anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It caused anxiety for me, and I'm like, okay, but children, and because in the beginning it was children don't need to wear masks. Well,
right, why not?
They have a
They're
system
breathing.
just like we do, I think. Last time I checked, right? Except for the ones that are cloned. So why wouldn't they have to? And then like we talked about earlier, how are they less? I don't know how the phrase I want to use, but like we were talking about earlier when we said downtown's not open, but the schools are. So how does
Right.
that work exactly? How do you decide that the children's lives are less than? There are a lot of companies that are going to working from home. A friend of mine's daughter, their company is a tax company for corporations. They're no longer going to be working in the office. Everybody had their time slot to come and clean out their office. You could not be in there with anybody else. And they had by, I think, the end of last week for everybody to clean out because they're now working from home. So it's like,
sadly, I think it's become more political than sensical or science or anything else. So I wonder how much of the fight for schools to open is to ensure that people can go vote instead of mailing in. Because having kids at home means you're going to have parents at home to take care of those kids.
Right.
And if I can't go to work, they can't go to school. Clearly, I can't go in line and vote. So I think that this is really becoming more political than sensible.
And I mean, and there was a big misconception as well at the beginning of this pandemic, the idea that, kids aren't getting sick as often as adults, so maybe they're not going to be able to get this virus. And then we come to find out kids are more likely to be super spreaders. They're more likely to have less severe symptoms, and people are like, oh, well, if the kids are going to be okay, then we can send back to school, completely forgetting that there have to be adults in the school building to watch these children and teach these children.
Right.
And then the districts who were saying, oh, well, kids under the age of 10 aren't going to have to wear masks. Well, under the age of 10 is in almost entire elementary schools. And then having to rethink that. I'm lucky my district said immediately every child would have to wear a mask once we go face to face. We're also in the situation where TEA, the Texas Education Agency, said, okay, great, we're going to provide you all of this, personal protective equipment. We're going to give you masks. We're going to give you this. Come to find out, child masks are on severe back order, and we might not get them until October or November.
Wow.
And that's, almost 3 months of school
with no
before these kids not being provided a mask and having to provide their own.
Wow. And that's interesting to say the least. And so we also have LaTreva, Herndon, Washington, who's also an educator for 11 years. That's a long time.
Not really in teacher year.
Oh, they're separate.
Okay. I'll break it down for you. I will work it out.
Okay. And it's also a new works director for Creative Collab, right?
Yes.
We'll talk about that a little bit also. And an advocate for
fatties.
For fatties.
Yes.
Okay.
It is me truly looking at living my truth completely. And my experience as a fat girl and moving through this world as a fat girl has been painful and joyful. And I am finally realizing that experience is valid. Those experiences are valid, and that I don't have to ignore the role that me being fat have played in those experiences. I don't have to downsize it because skinny people are uncomfortable. I don't have to do that anymore. And so that's the piece of advocacy that I'm beginning to step into now, that you don't have to shroud yourself. Like, you don't have to cover yourself. You don't have to try to be invisible. So I'm excited. Like, the first time I used that was with you and in this space. And so I'm excited to step into that and see where that takes me. But yep.
Honey, it's going to take you everywhere. That's why I wanted you to talk about it.
Well, thank you. Because when I put it, you were like, what?
I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page when it came to saying that, because I'm also an advocate for body positivity and all that. So that's why I was like, let me make sure, because I don't want to assume. Right. And then we're gonna move forward with that. So yeah, absolutely. And then when you said, well, so see about what had happened was, I'm not really, and I was like, oh yeah, you are now.
Right.
You are now, and that's awesome. And what's crazy is, so I've known you for a while, and never crossed my mind. I know what I went through as plump, voluptuous, fat, juicy, whatever
it was, BBW,
all of it. And I know what I went through, but looking at you, how you maneuvered through, how you handled everything, never in a million years would I have guessed that you were going through the same thing. Never.
Wow.
Never.
Wow.
Never would have guessed it, because to me, Treva was this, you up there with Celeste in my head, and I'm like, I ain't finna mess with y'all. Vocabulary word. She always on point with everything. She don't be playing, and look at her crazy if you want to and watch.
Was it that bad?
No, that's actually a good thing.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure there were a lot of people that took notes from that.
Wow.
Absolutely. And then to come full circle and be at a point where you can say, well, so really?
Yeah, that tells me how good I was at the cover.
That cover, boy, if I take off this cover. But yeah, I understand that totally.
So yeah, that's where I'm starting. So thank you for the chance to be here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna pull you back on for something else too. But anyway, so Miss Samantha.
Yes.
We are wait, before we go any further. I gotta get Joy. I don't have her information in front of me.
Surprise invite to the show, no bio. I'm about to float.
That's okay. So because I've done that before too. So tell us about yourself, because you have as many titles and have your hands and feet and kneecaps and as much stuff as Treva and Samantha. So
I am a middle school theater arts educator. I am currently named the first Title I middle school in the history of my district to win one at play contest. We're also the first by district champions middle school for my district in one act play contest. I am a TATAL member, which is an adjudicator for the state of Texas for one act plays. I sit on a lot of boards in a lot of places, a working actor, mother, wife. That's it.
Rapper,
newly rapper. I've been rapping since college, but now everybody knows.
Really? See, every time I turn around, you pulling out stuff.
Hey.
Jeez. Awesome. So again, thank you guys ladies for joining. And so when it comes to dealing with, and I know we've been talking about this, and I don't want to beat a dead bush, but it's a huge thing, because this is like people say, our new normal. This is how we live is in this thing. Would it be safe to say that going back to school and like you said, it may possibly be more political now than it is anything else? Would it also have to do with, because I've often heard that the districts or the schools don't get paid unless there are actual bodies in the seat?
That is what TEA said. TEA said that we would get our funding cut in public schools if there wasn't a way to take attendance, and that the best way to take attendance was if there were actual bodies in the school building.
Wow.
They are also pushing a specific online platform for learning, for virtual schooling, and looking at minutes logged in on that platform as being able to take attendance and if kids are in it. But that is a platform my district has been using since last school year. The kids will log on to the platform, get the activity, and log off the platform because they pulled the activity off of it and they're not staying in minutes. Plus, that the minutes are being counted as active minutes, which means they have to be continually moving through that particular website to be able to be considered as logged in. And so, like, I try not to speak too bad about the Texas Education Agency because they hold my certification.
Right.
And so I'd like to keep my teaching certification, but they are definitely making it very difficult on school districts to plan and to be able to do things safely with the stipulations they've been trying to put into place.
Wow.
Right.
That's interesting to know or to hear. Have you guys district done anything that you know of similar to that? Treva or Joy?
Well, right now we have the 4 weeks off for sure. But I think after that point is when all of this is going to really come in question for us, because after that point, it's not known or guaranteed how schools will be funded if we're not there. So, to be continued.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, like you said, you like to keep your certification. What all have you been advocating for when it comes to making sure that teachers are heard and seen, and making sure that they're being treated fairly?
I mean, just raising our voices up and not letting up, letting members of TEA know. The TEA commissioner, Mike Morath, is his position is an appointed one by the governor. So telling the governor and communicating to his office, advocating for what needs to happen. Attorney General Ken Paxton brought his 2 cents into the thing, into the whole situation, and said that, you know, local control situation, like a county can't say, oh, there's a blanket, you have to stay home and do things order, it has to be determined by districts. Well, then that changed something TEA said. And so a lot of these state level politicians are making things difficult for TEA to be consistent in their messaging and what they want to happen. And so talking to all of them and being like, look, we need to be doing things this way to stay safe, to keep our teachers safe, to keep our children safe. I mean, if you look at the numbers, 1/3 to 1/2 of Texas educators have at least one COVID-19 risk factor.
Right.
Wow.
1/3 of teachers are over the age of 50.
Right.
If you're looking at the communities that are hardest hit, that is our Black communities and our Latinx communities are the hardest hit by COVID-19. These are the communities that are most likely to also have job positions that are designated essential job positions. Right. And so it's all interconnected. How the COVID-19 response and how it's affecting different communities then leads to this, which leads to this, which leads to this, and everything is interconnected. You can find a connection between COVID-19 job loss and eviction to schools as well. Like, there's ways to connect everything that's happening in an area on a particular state's or city's COVID-19 response.
Wow.
Whew.
So I think I can't remember the exact question that you asked, but I wanted to say that something that I am getting through this experience or from this experience is frustrated, but I'm realizing that the power for real lies with the people. And I say that because at the point that the rift, I guess, began between teachers or people, not even teachers, people who wanted to go virtual, wanted schools to go virtual, and people who wanted to go face to face. At the point that that showdown really happened, you began to see the ways that officials would change what Samantha was just saying, that they would come out with one perspective, and then depending on how the people responded to that perspective, it would swing the other direction if necessary. And so I'm just kind of watching this and I'm like, okay, so the people have the power. All right, so the power source, to me, the most significant power source is the one that is closest to the people, right? So the fire is hottest, closest to the core. So if we're going to affect change, it has to start in circles like this. It has to start with coalitions here. And so I'm like, okay, I am absolutely inactive and unaware of how I can become more active in my community, right? I have felt that as a teacher, a lot of times I got to play it safe. I got to kind of keep my hands off of things. But I'm realizing, no, if I want my concerns as a teacher heard as part of the community, I have to move into more of those spaces where I can learn how to flex that muscle. And so if that means that I got to be at school board meetings now, if that means that I got to figure out how to become active on a local level so that I get to know who the movers and shakers are for the Black folk, for the white folk, for the Latinx folk, and see how we can come. Like, I'm realizing that that is where the power lies, because then, just like she said that the decision was made that local health officials can't make the call, it's up to districts, that power shifted to the districts. So then the districts began to make decisions that influence the state. Like, I am becoming more clear that I have to really be more engaged if I want to see anything done for the folks who have needs that are like mine and for my own needs. Because if I'm going to sit here and wait for somebody in Austin to give a damn about what I'm dealing with or my family in Galveston County is dealing with, I'm going to be waiting a long time. And we've already waited too long. And so as teachers, I feel like if we don't galvanize and strengthen this power that we're developing now and hold on to that and try to keep that synergy around it, if we lose that, we are going to see education fall into the hands of folks who care even less than they do now. And I don't know what the hell is going to happen if that happens.
Wow. So when you said how to flex the muscle, and I know you gave some examples. Do you have any more examples to give people so they'll know where they can go to voice?
I honestly, I am literally learning this as I'm going. Okay. Like, I am just more honestly, and I'm not lying. You know, we had a voting period. I can't remember. I think it was the primaries. I suck at this, y'all. But we've had a voting period since the time that we've been in this pandemic, right? So there were plenty of people that I had no idea in my county. Who am I voting for? I don't even know what they stand for. I literally drove around and forced myself to pay attention to people's signs. Who are the signs that I'm seeing? Who are the names that are coming up? Where are these names? What communities are these people's faces coming up in? So that's how I kind of began to inform myself. It was so like basic and banal, but I was so uninformed, and I didn't just want to go to the web, to the internet and get inundated with other people's opinions. So that's how I started. And then after that, I just began to pay more attention to signs, like not signs like that, but like posts or messages that were around how we can activate ourselves or how we can get active in our communities. I just started to pay more attention to those things so that I could learn the stuff to Google, right? Sometimes I didn't even know the words. I didn't even know what to call. I don't know what a commissioner is. What's the difference between a commissioner and a city councilman? Right. How can some places have, and so all of those sorts of basic, to me, things, I have to start there, and that's where I am. And so I'm trying to figure out what is my power, what can I say, what can't I say, what should I say, what should I speak to. And so I'm at that, just sort of picking it up and trying to make sense of it and researching. But I say I know nothing, and I'm growing and trying to ask questions, and that's just kind of where I've started.
Samantha, I know you said, well, you've been advocating a lot longer than LaTreva.
Yeah.
How actually did you even get started in that? What was the push that made you want to advocate for teachers?
I mean, ever since I started teaching, seeing inequities and what my campus would be provided versus another campus in my district versus what this district over here is getting, and seeing the inequities and how those inequities are delineated, seeing how, okay, this campus has, majority Black students. They're not getting as much money as this school over here that's in the suburbs and mostly white, and looking at the connections and all of the systemic things that have been at play for, decades upon decades. And I've always wanted to be a person who empowers others through music, because that was, my first love, and that's the content that I teach. And then from there, seeing, all the inequities, wanting to provide equity in education for everyone to have that, what they need, basically. And so I started that very, very local level, campus and district. Started working more in citywide, countywide activism and advocacy in the past few years, and figuring out, okay, how is this connected to this, to this, to this, to this, to this?
Do you guys find that it's a common thing, a common action for power shifting or passing the buck when it comes to deciding what to making sure that you guys are taken care of?
I think number one, as a teacher, it's always best to join the union, because they know these informations that we don't know. So, and they're there to fight for us. So I am a big advocate of teachers unions, or unions period, because those are the people that know the laws, know the movers and the shakers, know what to say, who to say it to, and they are literally there for you. So I would say start at the teachers union, and then become a part of that. You're going to learn everything you need to do to start your own organizations and to keep it going past this moment. Because I agree, like Treva said, if anybody never thought about how important the role of a teacher is, you having your child at home for the last 6 months has shown where we are needed. And, there's an important role in the community that educators play. So I would say start with your teachers unions, because they're they're there for you.
And that's something that has baffled me, because I don't think, or I don't feel that people knew or had any idea that for teachers, you have to get your lesson plans together before school starts, or before the semester starts. And throughout the semester, you're having to grade papers, create tests. Do you have to create tests or no?
Yes. If they're going to take a test, the teacher created it. If it's not the state test, the teacher creates it.
So there are a lot of things that anybody, either one of you guys, give me a list of things that you have to.
Things that teachers do.
Ciao.
We feed children, love children, teach children how to think independently, teach them how to create. They're going to learn their content. They also learn character development, empathy, sympathy. I mean, where you want to start?
I mean, on any given day, a teacher is, a teacher or a parent or a friend or a confidant or a counselor, whatever that child needs in that moment, where we provide it for them. I mean, I'm the teacher who has an entire cabinet full of food for kids who miss breakfast that day.
Yep.
I have bought clothes for students. I have bought shoes for students or jackets, to make sure that the kids have what they need. Because if the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if they are not fed and they feel safe in a place, they're not going to be able to learn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to provide that part to get them to then be able to focus on whatever the academic situation at hand is. And schools have been given more and more of those responsibilities as years have gone on, to where now that the kids are at home, a lot of parents are very, very confused as to why things aren't the way they had been. Mm-hmm. And it's because schools have been providing so much for the kids. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and I'm not talking bad about parents. I mean, my campus has tons and tons of amazing, wonderful parents. It's just that the schools have become such a big part of community. Mm-hmm. There's the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And so the school building has become that village to raise those children. Now that the pandemic has happened, the kids are separated from their village. Mm-hmm. And so trying to work around that and still providing those supports to the kids while also making sure they stay safe and we stay safe has become, I feel like it's a, 6D version of chess, like not a regular chessboard, but like a 6-dimension version of the chessboard while it's also on fire. That's what it feels like.
With 6D and on fire, did you say?
Yes, that's what it's been feeling like.
Wow. Treva, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think that for me, teachers are the greatest problem solvers, like hands down, by and large. I feel like one of the things that we are taught as part of our education is predicting misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And this is a skill that teachers are masters of. Because if I am going to maximize my time with you and make sure that you really understand what it is that this concept is trying to give you, I have to predict as many ways as you might misunderstand this, and then in my lesson teach you not to misunderstand that. So I have to be so tuned into that work and to who you are as a person developmentally that I predict that, get straight to what you need and give it to you so you can go and move forward, right? Mm-hmm. So teachers are master problem solvers. And I feel like because we have been so skillful and adept at that over the many years that this profession has existed, people have not realized how much we carry and how much schools actually provide, like Samantha said, for communities and families. Mm-hmm. And now that that's become evident through this situation, they're turning on us because how dare we not have this energy or not have this access to parents to be able to help them solve these problems, right? So the thing that I want to say is I have, as a teacher, last year, I went to my principal and was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how I can help and support. And she was like, there are lots of kids who get dropped off because their parents have to go to work before 5. There are lots of kids who will get dropped off at the school around 5:15, and they're just sitting here until someone comes to the building. And it's up to that person whether or not they let them in. The policy is that they don't let them in without an adult. But if there's a situation, I don't know an adult that's going to walk past a kid, especially in those colder months, and just let them sit out there alone, right? So she was like, if you would be willing to do this, help me figure this out. So I was like, I can get here about an hour earlier and, be wherever you need me to be. So we decided that I would sit in the library. The kids literally would be there 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. Teachers don't have to report until 7:30 sometimes.
Right.
And so it's like, what were these kids doing ahead of that?
Right.
Nobody paid me for that. I didn't get a pat on the back. We made an announcement. We told children and families this, there's a random teacher who's going to sit with your kid. If you need them, drop them off by the library and go on about your business. Wow. And I was there to let them sit down. Right. And so people don't realize those kinds of things that teachers offer and that teachers give to their children. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so hurtful when the state is basically like telling us to choose our health over being able to do this. Why can't I do both? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why can't we find a way to innovate education so that we can do both? Why can't we recognize that teachers are not superhuman? We're not. Really? And no, we're not. Like flesh, blood.
Mm-hmm.
And
as
so
much as we try.
Yeah, but teachers do all kinds of stuff. So to ask, so what are some of the things? We haven't even talked about IEPs and 504s and ARDs and having whole tutorials and folks who are coaches on top of that. We haven't talked about folks who are having clubs and making sure kids are getting fed on the weekends because they found some sort of program that they could start. We haven't talked about that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted
to go into grad school because I want to develop. We haven't talked about that.
Right.
And hours upon hours of professional development.
Because oftentimes that's not seen.
Right.
Right. And for me personally, it's because I don't think that it's evident yet.
Right.
Right. Because in my head, and my head ain't that it's big head, but sometimes it's airy. I feel like it, and for real, in my head, it's how dare you put them in this predicament after everything you've already done as teachers. And then from what I see, the first thing they want to cut is teacher funding.
Full budget.
Teacher,
teacher
budget.
I'm
an artsy person. I was in band. I was in, can't draw work nothing. So we ain't talking about that art. But I'm that artsy person. So when I hear, we got to cut this, and it's always the first thing they always want to talk about is cutting in education. I'm thinking, well, damn.
So I'll say, as a parent and a teacher, even it's sometimes amazing to me the work that teachers are able to do with kids. I'm a theater teacher. So I have a 4th grader now and a kinder is what I'll be going into. I am an educator and my husband is an educator. We all have synchronized learning for the next 4 weeks. So how do I support my kinder, teach my class, husband's teaching his class, and baby girls in class too. So, I understand the parent side, the educator side, but even as an educator, it's very hard to remind yourself how much teachers truly do. So I guess I say that to say, it's not the parents' fault. We go to work or parents go to work, drop their kids off. You come back and you realize, wow, my baby knows what a whatever is, not realizing somebody had to teach them something. Or maybe you realize it, but you don't know how long or what steps they took. So, I say that as a parent educator,
hats off to parents.
Right. Teachers, parents, those are the people that my heart are breaking for, those teachers that have those young students. God forbid you're also like me and your kids are high risk. Your household is high risk. And in 4 weeks, I now have a whole bunch of decisions I potentially have to make.
Right.
And let's talk about that for a minute too.
Sure.
And I know, we talked about it prior to, but because like you said, you have your whole family is high risk.
Yeah. I'm medically dramatic. My children suffer from, it's called hyperplexia. So normal, their body is normal body temperature. When my son got a cold, his temperature went to 106.3. Not strep, not a flu, a cold. My daughter, a cold, 105.8. So it's like, and they don't look sick. So the only way you know is if you hug them, you feel them, because they look normal because they're medically dramatic like their mom. So, it's like, how do I educate her? I have to, me and my husband, if they say school's open, we got to pay for the house. We got to feed kids. My mother-in-law lives with us now too. So, but I also have these children who have a disorder, for lack of better words, where I can't subject them to a virus that can cause high temperatures. If a cold, temperature-wise would look like it could take them out. So I don't know what I'm glad that I have a lot of things that I can fall back on. God forbid I have to. That's it.
And that adds another amount of stress.
I mean, look at how many of our kids that we teach live in multi-generational houses.
Right.
And one thing nobody is talking about also is the fact that if we are being pushed into a face-to-face school situation, there is going to be trauma that happens to our kids.
Right.
The second one of their friends gets sick, or one of their teachers gets sick, or God forbid somebody on the campus dies. Right. There is going to be a trauma because they're going to have what is known as survivor's guilt. Mm-hmm. And wondering if I was, thinking, oh, am I the one that did this? Mm-hmm. Or if they are completely healthy and they get sick from some, their best friend at school, and then they bring it home and grandma gets sick. Mm-hmm. And or mom or dad or, older brother, older sister. And so there's very, very real consequences to our children's mental health if they come back to school face to face too. And a lot of parents are saying, well, but it's hurting my child's mental health to not be at school too. It's like, yeah, but you also can make sure that your child stays physically healthy. And it goes back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
My question, I hear people talk about, we do have students that are in abusive households and abusive situations. So we need to open up schools for those abused children. My thought on that, I've only worked at Title I schools. So there's a percentage of a percentage of students that I have that have dealt with real life trauma. When they come to school, anything that they, of course not anything, but anything in my power that they are lacking, I try to give it to them. So we open schools. Now you have that child who is finally out of this abusive home. They go to school, and that one teacher who used to always give them the love that they didn't get at home is now like, hey, Johnny, because we can't touch no more. We can't be close. I can't pull you aside, and really, so I'm more concerned about, I know the focus is on those children who are in those environments in the house, but what happens to those children when they leave the house, they still get that resistance, or, they don't get what they used to get. I just worry about them. And I don't know if opening answers that either.
I mean, how are you going to social distance pre-K classrooms or kindergarten classrooms?
Yeah.
I mean, I have had to, or substitute situations. If a teacher is sick in my district, no fault to my district at all, but it's very difficult to get substitutes. So I have had situations where I've had team members in my specials team be absent, and I'm all of a sudden having to teach 2.5 classes by myself. Right. 60, 70 kids that I'm having to shove into my music room. How are you going to make sure kids stay healthy if that situation happens?
You can't. All of the,
and there's no way.
I'm just waiting for, well, I'm not going to say that. So one of the things that I am watching is what's happening in these districts and in states where they've already started going back to school. Mm-hmm. Right? So we're already seeing reports that first day of school, student comes in and they have COVID. They've tested for COVID. And so I am watching these things happen because I want to see what the district's response is, because that's a question that has not fully been answered by districts or the state. Like, if there's a situation where a class or a pod or whatever is determined to have been exposed, what is going to be our response, right? And so those are the times where it's kind of like, well, we're going to leave that up to the districts. Okay, having gone back to professional development this week, we kind of had situations where we were talking about what's going to have to happen if we come back to campus, if we even come to campus to visit, to get something, not visit to hang out, but I'm coming to pick something up. I have to come get a textbook. There's an entire protocol we have to go through in order to get access. You can only access the building through certain doors. I am totally okay with that. So the issue or the question then becomes, so if we're having to be back on campus, how are we ensuring that these protocols and these safety measures are able to be continued? So they introduced this to us. And of course, teachers' anxiety, you can see in the Zoom meeting, in the chat, that people's anxiety is through the roof, because not only are we talking about, or not that, we're only talking about if you need to come to campus in the next 4 weeks. But our minds are already wondering, okay, if we have to come back to campus, what about? Right. And every response was, we'll deal with that when we get there. So you're saying to me that in 4 weeks, we'll talk about what we're going to do? Like, I'm confused. Wow. And if there's nothing that you can even tell me now, how do you expect me to be comfortable considering this in 4 weeks? Mm-hmm. Like, I am watching because I want to see what other states are doing. I want to hear when districts are going to actually start talking about when we get back, mm-hmm. because we want to start bracing ourselves for that place. Mm-hmm. Then this is how we're going to move forward, rather than there still being this, we don't know. But I understand that we don't know. Mm-hmm. But if you want to convince me that it's okay, you got to do better than we'll deal with it then.
Yeah. And that kind of it leaves room for a lot of mishaps.
Yes.
Because you're not just dealing with one person, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It's a whole conglomerate of people. Each class is at least how many students?
I have 30 in all my classes.
Anywhere from 15 to 27.
I have 30 in every class. 6 classes of 30.
Yes, ma'am, Treva.
So I probably have somewhere between 20 and 20, or 25 and 28 students per class. Mm-hmm. However, one thing that I haven't heard people talk about is, in a city like Houston, you have overlapping districts.
Okay.
So if I am living on one block where school district A is virtual and everybody is away from everybody, and they're very careful about how to navigate this, and I'm on the next block and the next district is like, do you, good luck.
Wow.
That community they're still in the community together. Mm-hmm. But the ways that the districts are handling things differently are going to not only impact that school and that district and that school, in that classroom, but potentially other districts and families and communities that are trying to do something very different. Mm-hmm. And that freaks me out, because I might be, Fort Bend over here, but next county over, it's not the same. Mm-hmm. And you come to my grocery store because you're the one that's closer to you, or I'm the one that's closer to you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
We, in the Houston area, the largest school district is Houston Independent School District. They are virtual schooling until middle of October. Teachers weren't on campus doing anything. Everybody's at home until October. The second largest school district in the Houston area is Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District. They were going to have the students be back off campus. Well, they were going to be back face to face. And then they were changing it, and it keeps going back and forth to the point where the union for the school district and the teachers sued the school district about whether or not they would have to be in person for professional development. Wow. And the teachers won that.
Telling y'all, getting the union.
So, and that's a huge disparity. And then LaTreva and Joy, their district, I believe, is the third largest school district in the Houston area. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And their school district's doing something completely different. And then I'm in a different district from all the three other ones, and they're doing something completely different. And so there is no consistency because it's been very like, okay, local control, and this is what we're going to do, and like, I can understand where in some situations, like what Houston as a city is going to do is going to be different than, say, Rusk, Texas, Austin versus, Rusk, Texas, or Nacogdoches, Texas. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very different on how things are done because of, types of industries, number of kids enrolled in schools, how many schools there are in the town or city. Right. But to have so many inconsistencies in the same city, in the mm-hmm. same county, it's just completely baffling.
And that represents what's been happening across our nation, right? So basically, you got 50 different governors deciding with the spin a wheel thingy what they're going to do to address the pandemic, and that's potentially 50 different solutions. And we have not yet closed our borders to the other states, which isn't going to happen. But what I'm saying is we're constantly interacting, even interstate traffic. So it's like you can see in the United States what could potentially happen if we let districts and individual areas decide how they're going to do it, because resources are not equitable.
Not at all.
They're not going to be able to keep the same children the same amount of safe. Like period.
I mean, and I know that the question was asked, about how different districts are handling things. If we look at districts that have already opened, like in Georgia,
right?
Like there's that young woman who in a high school took a picture of the completely packed hallway.
Yes.
And instead of the superintendent of that district saying, okay, once the media backlash began, okay, we need to change things and how we're doing stuff, instead suspended that young woman because she showed the truth.
Punish the child.
And he didn't want the truth to be told because it made him look bad. And then, at the end of the first week, whole district got shut down for virtual school until next semester. Because there were so many infections that had popped up inside a week.
Yeah.
In the same district?
In the same district.
Yeah. And that wasn't the first place I heard of. I can't remember where it was the first place. But they went back to school.
Was it I heard about the one where it was like the first day.
Yeah.
Are you talking about that?
Okay. Yeah. And so, that I heard about, I remember seeing, I glanced at that when I saw that because I was actually in someone else's house and they had it on. And I remember glancing at it as I was leaving thinking, okay, cool. Now my take on that was, now you see why y'all really need to sit down, talk to the teachers, do more than just a survey. That the survey is great. It's a start because this is a pandemic. It's not like we get one every year. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's a start. However, there needs to be actual conversation. There's only so much you can put on paper. But when you actually sit down and talk to the people, whether it's the teachers, the parents separately or together, then I feel like you can get a better consensus of what's going on, a better idea of what's going on, what's needed. Don't be afraid to take in the ideas, like really punishing the child. That could have been what needed to be done, what needed to be seen for the people who have no clue. Because oftentimes the people that make the rules sitting somewhere else with their back turned to the whole situation.
Right.
Like so many people say, y'all ain't gonna be doing nothing no way. And they've never been a teacher.
Right.
They probably haven't, some. And so that was actually good for the student should have been, instead of one of those testosterone driven, oh, you gonna make me look bad. I hope they take that strike off for her though. That sucks.
Oh no, it was overturned. Her suspension was overturned.
Right.
That's
But they were ready. Like her family was ready, and you could tell that the child, just by the evidence that she was using in terms of, I did this with this in mind. Or she even had one situation where she was tracking the number of students in each classroom who were and were not wearing a mask for 4 days in all of her classes. Like, so she had data. She had just information that was supporting her position. And so I just appreciated the intention that she put around that, and it wasn't just emotional. And I feel like that's what a lot of the pushback around this is couched in, even in the face of facts and data and just what's happening. There's so much information that, like, there are literally 170,000 people who were here in January who are not. Like, because of decision making that was out of their hands. Like, that is mind-boggling. 170,000 people.
Yeah, and that's a huge number.
I mean, you want to know the best way to get an opinion on whether school should open? Ask an ICU nurse if they would send their child to school right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And as many videos as I've seen of them in tears and tired and
pleading,
wear masks, please stay home, please, that sort of thing. Yeah, I really think that would lean on a no. Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a there we go.
Oh.
There we go. For those parents, thank you, Miss Iris, that say kids need to socialize. Face-to-face instruction is best for kids. I'm so done with them. Kids socialize too much in class settings. They are there to learn. A child needs to socialize on every level, not just kid to kid. Schools are also breeding grounds for abuse, bullying, and so much negativity between they are. Also, a lot of pedophiles that use schools as their preying ground has reduced dramatically. Also, people have lost how to work together. Oh, yeah.
So I have a lot to say about, kids losing their ability to work together. But that would, I'll be talking for hours and hours and hours about that. But I mean, schools have become so academic focused starting at the younger grades. Kindergarten now looks very different from kindergarten when I was there, 28 years ago.
Really? So you don't just get the color and sleep?
No, not in kindergarten. No, it is very academic focused. Like, you have to be on an on-grade reading level and be able to do this math thing and know this and know this. And so making it more academic has taken away the exploratory play aspect that was in kindergarten, like when I was a child. And that is where you learn a lot of social emotional learning concepts and being able to talk to people and learning, who you are and your interests. And so, that factor has, you can directly correlate the loss of exploratory play in kindergarten and younger grades to so much of how many issues kids have nowadays when they get to middle school and high school.
So that's to say that the socialization part of face-to-face is needed.
It is.
It's needed.
But it can definitely, and I'm hoping that we can see that, going back to how much teachers do, but just how much schools do. I wish that we could find a way to unpack all of the different services that are provided by schools and districts, and find ways to build partnerships with maybe community groups, or have somebody encourage people to start nonprofits. I don't know. So that school can be school, and there can be agencies or organizations or businesses that are willing to support some of the other aspects of community needs that are being supported by school right now, because I saw a lot of school is school, it's not daycare. School is school, it's not babysitting. I'm a teacher, not a babysitter, because the whole thing was parents need to go to work. Somebody got to stay with these kids. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, all right, well, let's unpack that so that teachers are not having to learn. I went to school. My degree is in African and African American studies, also known as I have been trained or prepared to be a history teacher. Mm-hmm. I have had to develop skills around counseling, around how to talk to kids about, I don't know, the trauma that they're experiencing in their lives. Like, there are things that as a teacher, like, somebody else went to school to do this. I love counselors. I think therapy is great. I think that my job should be to refer them to the counseling program that is wrapped into our school. So I feel like I am hoping that we realize that there is an unnecessary burden that teachers in schools are carrying when it comes to the kind of work that you're expecting of us. And I'm hoping that we can find better partnerships or create partnerships with folks who are willing to help carry some of that to support our children. Because right now it's getting kind of heavy on schools and teachers when this is for everyone.
I mean, our school counselors don't even get to be school counselors anymore because they're testing coordinators.
Facts.
Wow.
Facts.
I was going to ask. I was like, okay, but wait, what happened to the school counselors? What?
Oh, my school counselor last year maybe saw one kid a day because she was having to handle this testing thing and this testing thing and this testing thing and this testing thing. And that's no fault to her. She did the best she could. And that's not even no fault to the district, because the district
is doing the best they can.
Has their hands tied.
Yeah.
But if we've got all these standardized testing and tying, this to the whatever the scores are on standardized tests, then that, takes things away. That's another thing. Our kids don't get to socialize as much in school as they probably need to because everything's so focused on getting them ready for that test.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say that, the Texas Education Agency had a STAR testing calendar before they had guidelines for how schools could reopen.
Yes.
That tells you everything you need to know about their priorities.
Yes.
Wow.
They do not care. Like, honestly, it feels like they don't care about the safety of the kids as long as that test gets taken.
And what is the purpose of all the testing?
Money.
To pass on money. To get around.
Standardized testing is $1 billion industry.
Damn.
I want to say that in the work that I started doing with Samantha, we just kind of got put together in a group to just kind of take some action on this stuff. I want to say, someone said that districts are paying upwards of $300,000 a year for testing.
Million.
Yeah.
Million.
Well, so the 300K is
per school, probably.
Right.
Probably per school.
Okay. Schools are paying 300,000. Okay, that's probably more accurate.
Okay. I mean,
what'd you say?
I said, can we buy stock in that? I mean, I missed
something.
something.
I'm sure Pearson or McGraw-Hill have, or what's the other one? The other testing one. The Pearson is the company that handles standardized testing in Texas right now. And they have said outright, we will make the test confusing for kids to take so that they fail it, so that the districts have to keep paying us for retake tests.
But parents can always opt out of the test.
Yes, they can.
Talk about that, because I've never heard that before. I get the little bits of information and I throw them out there and incite riots. So that's I'm a firecracker person.
So if you can opt out, if your child is in one of the grade levels that it's like required for them to move on, so like a 5th grade or an 8th grade, or I think 11th grade is the final year. if you opt out of testing, then if I remember correctly, then there has to be a committee formed to determine whether or not your academic work of the past year, 2 years, or whatever is sufficient enough to mean that you could be promoted to the next grade level.
And I want to say that it's any school year, because I remember in one of the conversations that there was a parent who said that she had done it for like 3 different years for her child, and that as she did it each year, she exposed it and shared it with other parents and let them know that this was a right that they had. And so over those years that her child was opting out, more and more parents came online. So at first the district tried to make it difficult for her to choose this as an option. By the time that people became aware, they just changed it to a simple form that families had to sign. So that's what I'm saying, that the power lies with the people. And if we're informed, and so that's something that literally I learned on one of these panels, that there was a parent that shared that and has been a great resource for me since then. So it's any year, from my understanding, that they have to take a STAR test.
And I'll tell you from the school standpoint, like the schools, basically so much gets tied around the testing. So the schools will pressure parents to make sure their kid gets to the building to test, especially if it's a child that they are positive will pass that test, because that ups the campus passing rate. And if the higher the campus passing rate, the better position the campus and the school district is in making sure they get funding, making sure they don't become at risk of being taken over by TEA or dismantled by TEA, as what happened with districts like North Forest ISD,
right,
which is was in the Houston area. They didn't, the North Forest didn't have the test scores that TEA wanted from them, and so that district was absorbed into HISD.
Wow.
And then there is the option for districts that keep having issues with getting the test scores up, then they become a district of innovation. So they have to follow a different set of rules through TEA. And there's all these different moving pieces, when really the issue should just be, let's educate the children. Instead, it becomes, how much can this company and this person and this profit off the children? That's where charter schools come in. They profit off of children, and private schools.
And so for a parent to opt out, the thing that they have to do is not send their child to school during testing.
On testing days. Yeah.
So the week, there's nothing that they have to sign. They don't have to let anybody know ahead of time. They ain't got to get a doctor's notice. The week of testing, you keep your kid home. Don't let them go on that Friday, because Friday is the makeup
day.
So go ahead, spend some enrichment time with them, create some sort of experiences that you can help them have during that week. And then the district or the school will then create that panel or that group. And then that's when you use the grades. That's when you have opportunities to really start to create the kind of academic experience that you want your kid to have, in order to see, okay, he's really growing, or he or she is not growing, based on a more comprehensive look at their work for the year, not just on a single test.
Honestly, one of the good things out, like from last spring and having to go online early and everybody scrambling, my district provided project-based learning activities. And that was across grade levels for the last, 6 weeks of school. And there was so much interesting, creative, thoughtful projects that our kids did that they enjoyed doing, because there wasn't you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way, you have to make sure it's this way for a test, and this. They just got to explore in their learning. And that's what we want all of us as educators want more than anything, for our kids to love learning and to explore topics and things that are interesting to them so that they can, go on and innovate in other ways. I mean, I found out this summer that a former student of mine who is about to be a senior in high school published a book.
During the pandemic?
During the pandemic. He is a published author before he even graduated high school.
That's
so and I congratulated him on Twitter, and he talked about how, in my class, I taught him to, express himself. And though he didn't choose to use music as his form of expression, he chose writing, that he remembered that aspect. Nice. So much of what educators do isn't even about the content or the curriculum. It's helping kids find who they are and what avenues that they can take in order to become the best version of themselves. And forcing them face to face in our COVID world where they have to be 6 feet apart from everybody at all times, and this, that, and the other, and all of these different changes to how the building's going to have to look, isn't going to do that for our kids. It's going to take all joy out of being in a school building.
True. And I don't think, of course, kids don't realize that, right? They're remembering February. They're remembering what happened before spring break. And it's like, it's not going to look quite the same, or it shouldn't. It might. It shouldn't be the same.
And I wonder if parents even are realizing that.
Exactly.
Like I remember seeing a Facebook post of a woman who had set up her 3rd grade classroom and had videoed all of the different things she was having to do, and all the parents getting angry at her. And she's like, well, this is what we're being told to do to make sure your child doesn't get sick.
Yeah.
And the parents were like, well, this isn't what school's supposed to be. Yeah, you're right. It isn't.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be.
But
and that's why I said earlier, Treva, sorry, Samantha, that it's not evident. They're not, oftentimes, and even one of the viewers said that the rest of Miss Iris's was that parents forget, the realization that first, y'all are the first educators, teachers.
The parents
start. But when it comes to, I lost my spot in what she was saying because she had a lot.
Hold on, right. I was looking at that one.
Many parents drop kids off and really use schools as babysitting units while they go off and do their own thing. And she said, my heart truly goes out to all involved, but I don't know anyone that signed up to cause death or be responsible for someone's death. Leaders of the country, federal as well as local, are chasing money, and we talked about that. But yeah, it's my heart goes out to y'all, period. Teachers, parents that are teachers, parents, because you get so bogged down with watching the news and hearing COVID, and not really having a whole bunch of solutions.
Right.
It's a whole lot of wait and see.
Right.
A lot of that. I see a lot of wait and see. I see a lot of, no, that was for them to do. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're supposed to do. And people getting so bogged down with that, coupled with how am I going to pay for whatever I got to pay for to keep the lights on, food, because I didn't qualify for this program that was out there that y'all said was out there for us. So they have so much to deal with during this pandemic, and not enough answers, and people forgetting that they still have a voice. Case in point, the election for board of trustees today. How often did you hear about that in the news while they were talking about COVID? And I had one of the Obes on here last week talking about his place, what he was running for place 7, and what it entails, because so many people, I think people have gotten, like I said, bogged down with what's going on. They miss that. And those are one of the ways, voting for these people in these positions is one of the ways that um, enables the parents and the teachers, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to see
Oh,
a
yeah.
difference.
Oh, yeah. In my community organizing, I hosted last October, and then the April before that, candidate forums for school board candidates, and invited every single person I could find that was running for a school board position. And very, very few people signed up to participate, and even less showed up. Now, the people who did show up had amazing, wonderful questions. The candidates that showed up, for the most part, were very thoughtful and intentional, and very much were participating because it was for the kids, and they wanted to do things for the kids. But not very many people think about, like, my district school board, and they've done some really, really amazing things in terms of, anti-discrimination policies for students and staff, and taking care of staff members and making sure things are what they need to be just in general. And then people don't really, really think about, school boards. And school boards determine where the money goes in a district and how the money's allocated and to what departments. If you look at the State Board of Education,
What department?
the State Board of Education, a friend of mine, Michelle Palmer, is running for State Board of Education. And she's a teacher and running for state board. Not many people on the State Board of Education are educators.
Right.
Wow.
So
yeah, and they determine our curriculum. They determine what our teaching standards are, the State Board of Education. And so to have non-educators in those positions that don't understand not just child development, what they're developmentally can handle academically, but, all of that. And then you look at the fact that the state of Texas, basically, Texas and California determine what the textbooks look like for the rest of the country because they're the two biggest textbook markets. So what happens in Texas then becomes what is taught elsewhere too. And it's just mind-boggling how one small election here in the city of Houston could eventually become an issue for education across the entire state or the entire country.
I wonder why school boards are not, like, having conversations about them and how we can why it's necessary to be more active in them. Like, why isn't that conversation that's happening within schools? Like, I would think that we would want students, for example, participating in school board meetings and giving perspectives around what they're seeing on their campuses, that they want the school board, like, if they're going to have power and if they're going to recognize that this is a part of citizenship, I'm wondering why more schools don't actively encourage participation from teachers and students.
We don't teach civics anymore. Remember,
it's not
a very small part of U.S. history. It's probably a unit. Yeah.
I mean, my students will tell you they learn more about social studies and history in my class than they do in their social studies class. And that's to no fault to their teachers. It's just the way it's delineated at the elementary level.
Right.
And me, I have my music part, but I also have a hard time keeping that community organizer part of my brain out of things. And so I want the kids to be informed about what goes on in their area and what goes on in their community and their city and their state. I just also have to figure out a way to add the music part into it so I'm meeting my teaching standards too.
Right.
Well, so
that just speaks to me like that seems like that's an area that we could explore as educators, because that's something that we should be encouraging each other to do, and kids and parents, because I don't know that there are parents who realize that if they are dissatisfied with things within their district, that is the avenue that they need to go through in order to express that dissatisfaction, rather than just kind of being really frustrating and giving it all at the campus level. Those people are only doing what the board and the district have come together to say are the policies. So I'm just wondering how we can get that out to communities and families and kids more, so that we realize that that's a really powerful place where we can let our interests be known.
It's definitely something that's needed.
Do you guys and do they still have and I can only go based off of what school was like when I was in school 800 years ago, do they still do drives and let parents know, hey, your voice is important, letting them know, and I know they probably don't still stick notes and stuff to shirts when the children go home of certain ages, but letting them know, because if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of parents email teachers nowadays.
Right.
Is it a way to let them know that way? Hey, we got a board meeting coming up, understand this, in something like a newsletter, in the know, if you don't come in, we need your participation with this, because without parent participation, this could happen or that could happen, and kind of spell it out for them, for those who will actually read it.
Board meetings and things like that are always posted on like the district social media and
the websites.
Right?
But if
But there's not.
ain't nobody gonna look at it.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No. So
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, on my campus level, whenever there's anything major happening on my campus level, my principal does a call out to all the parents, or, and sends emails. If there's anything major that the district needs the parents to participate in, like the COVID-19 surveys, they do call outs and they do emails, but nothing about board meetings, nothing about, I think a couple of years ago when my district did a bond election, and there were some call outs and emails about that, but that was hey, we want to raise your property taxes a little bit to get some more money.
Yeah.
So that we can do this.
Only when they need for themselves and not for the welfare or the well-being of the student and or the teacher. Basically.
Or creating, making sure that the community knows that this is your space to tell us how we're doing. Hey, it's that time again. But no, they like she said, they posted on the website. That's what they send out the invitations. But I don't know that campuses. I've been on a campus that had a culture of, let's get our community activated around participating in school boards, right? And I recognize that that's a campus culture thing. That's not, something that's kind of like voting in a family, right? If you're in a family that believes in it and y'all do it and we go gung-ho, or you don't. And so I think that that's something that I'm interested in seeing how I can impact that for my campus and my kids, because as an 8th grade U.S. history teacher, they have opinions. They can be strong and wrong, but they have opinions. And so if I can help them, they get mad about uniforms. Come on, let's take that to the board. You can talk to the principal, but really take this to the board. Let your concerns, like, I want this when I get to high school. Let's take it to the board, like giving them that knowledge, because that's why I am the age that I am. And I'm just now learning this stuff and putting it together, because nobody walked me through. Nobody introduced me to. Nobody helped me make the connections. Local power looks like this. Wield your local power when you participate in these governing bodies. This is how you participate. This is where you can start that at the pre-K level. You can start advocacy there. Then you teach them how to get to their like, it's a process, and I'm excited because I have ideas.
Nice. And I like the idea of introducing it to them, like you said, at kindergarten, because a lot of I've come across people who, they don't understand.
Oh, they do.
4-year-old tell me my shoes were sexy.
Oh, well.
They understand. right? And he couldn't say the word sexy. It took him a minute. The first time he said it, he said sassy. That's what it sounded like to me. And I was like, what? They sassy. No, Mimi, shoes, sexy. And he stood there until he pronounced the word sexy. And he was like, I got it. Mimi, shoes, sexy. So if a 4-year-old can go through that, trust me when I tell you they can understand, you know, the words that are coming out of your mouth, especially if you paint a picture or if you're able to put it in a way that they'll grasp. And some of them I've seen have a vocabulary list that's more extensive than mine.
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go.
I mean, I teach 4 to 11-year-olds. So 7, 8 years old, they start asking me questions about current events. They start asking me about questions about things they see on the news. Nice. You know, they ask about, you know, my 5th graders, especially my gifted and talented 5th graders who are in classes that are asking them to think, you know, more extensively and be more independent thinkers. Because of that gifted and talented designation, you know, ask me, Ms. May, why is this systemic racism situation happening? I've had that question asked to me by a 10-year-old, and I'm over here like, I'm drinking my coffee. What? I get asked, you know, Ms. May, why is it that LGBTQ people are treated this way, blah, 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 when they are born the way they are by an 8-year-old? And, you know, so our kids, they understand a lot more than they get credit for. And they're naturally curious about the world around them and why it works the way it does. And honestly, right now, I don't know how I would feel about being a science teacher right now. Because they are seeing the scientific method play out in real time on the news every single day.
Yep. And what I was going to say was, you know, going back or connecting the dots between the school board piece, this is the best way to teach them how systemic racism can be addressed, how these situations can how they can change policies, or if they recognize that something is inequitable, that understanding that if they see that in their school, going through the school board, going through those channels are the accepted ways of resisting that change and trying to do something about it. So if we want to take it a step forward, further, and not only saying, hey, point out systemic racism when you see it, but here's how you actually begin to affect change around doing something about what you're pointing out and what you're seeing.
And so in my content of theater arts, I guess my goal with my students, our first plays are usually the deep, you know, most people would say inappropriate for middle school plays, but what I want for my students is the ability to think independently. I think the problem nowadays for society is that they've lost the ability to research. So it's like, if you see it on somebody's page, it's fact, you posted, you spread it, it's law. But how many times do you like date check or, you know, like really research what is being said? So that's what I try to instill in my students. We take on plays that might have subject matter that I feel like is teaching them lessons for life. But what it also does is opens them up to the world that they're in. The play that the one act play that we did last year was To Be Young, Gifted, and Black by Lorraine Hansberry. There's not a lot of middle schoolers doing that play, but over the break with what happened in the world, you can't tell me that there weren't certain scenes just from that play that we did that hit my students a little differently, because what they saw was a play written in '69 being lived out on TV in 2020. So although I think that it's important to give those students that information, when you start putting that on the teacher to give it to them, then you also have to take into account, well, what does that teacher believe? Because it's going to be very hard to teach about anything and disregard your personal beliefs. So I think that the way I try to teach them about the world is let them research and investigate, script analysis, whatever, but that hopefully it will become lessons that they could use in real life. But just be careful with putting that stuff on teachers, because depending on who that teacher is, that's what those kids get fed, and it could still be the wrong information. People need to learn how to think and research.
Mm-hmm.
But that does need to start early.
Absolutely. And it's something that my dad used to, when my nephew was born, we had him, and my dad used to talk about that all the time, and I witnessed it with him, was teaching him early on so that he will be prepared, because it is a process, this thing of life and what we learn. And so if you start early, you don't have to, when they get 5 or 6, now you're trying to teach them, what you could have taught them when they were 3 or 5, or 4, and now there's a pileup of information. Some of them will absorb perfectly well, and some of them will, block it all and be like, yeah, so I'm going back to my milk and cookies.
But it starts so small. Having, like I said, I have a kinder, so a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. It starts as early as them picking out their own clothes. I want my kids to be able to make decisions, stand by their decisions, have information, about why they made those decisions. And I think that's what builds better humans.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kids start getting a sense of who they are and who their places are in the world when they're 2 years old.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, it's our job as educators to help foster that and help them on that journey and help guide them without overly influencing, but making sure they get the information that they're supposed to, so that they can be who they are and become their best versions of themselves.
So would you encourage teachers to add to an already overloaded list of things, and not all, certainly, but those who can and are interested, like we were talking about earlier, the information of or encouraging the students to have a voice. Treva, you were talking about the students having a voice, and I was thinking when you were saying have them write letters to the board members or the whomever, email them if they don't want to write letters, and let them know, hey, this is how it gets started. You can do something. You're already sitting there. You're going to be on Facebook anyway, so pause Facebook for a minute and send an email about how you feel about this rule or this regulation, and how it affects you now, and what you want to see, like you said, when you get to high school, so that it can get started now and they get used to seeing that and understanding that you don't have to be on a picket line. You don't have to be, out front of a building picketing. You can picket in other ways. You can stand up for yourself in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
Your voice does matter, because a lot of people don't think their voice matters.
Yep.
And this is a way to teach them how to vote before they can vote.
Yes.
And so if you are telling them, like, I taught at a school that the AC stopped working every year in like April. So from April until, we would come in, the teachers would come in earlier. It was a little warm. So, either the AC was off, and this is a huge building. So either the AC was off all night and nobody thought to turn it on, or it's been on and it's just not cooling. Mm-hmm. Either way, the building is hot in the morning. So by the time you get children and then the heat of Texas moving through the day, like, it was sweltering 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, kids could have been writing letters to complain to the board. Now, mind you, several years later, it got on the bond and the school was granted the money for the bond. But how powerful would it have been for it also to have been a part of that students were the ones who were saying, this is not okay. Yeah. And they're saying it to the group of people that can make a difference, not just screaming at me that they want to get some water. They're upset because it's hot. Sweetheart, we're all hot. I'm so sorry that this fan that I bought with my money to cool you off. It's circulating well. I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
However, you know, I'm not the person who can do anything about that right now. And it just like if we I don't know, that school board thing just kind of has me going now, because it's like if we can get kids invested in that is the voice. That's who's going to make the changes.
And I've learned in a lot of in several situations that I've been in, oftentimes it's those people that will be listened to, the students.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am an Uber driver, and I've been a cab driver. I was a cab driver, I think, for 7, 8 years or so. And what I noticed was the company listened to the customers. We the drivers could complain
Right.
until Gibraltar fell, Jesus threatened to come back sooner than later, all of that, right? He could be knocking on the door and they still were not going to hear what the drivers had to say in our complaints. But let that customer say something.
Mm-hmm.
And then Johnny on the spot with a solution, and so oftentimes, even as an Uber driver, I've seen it. The drivers have been complaining about different things. They don't do or move until the customer does. And I feel like that's the same thing here.
It is.
It would be kind of like a reverse psychology type situation. Get the students more involved, get them more vocal, and like you said,
the power.
how to stand on how to do the research to find out who is in control of what, who, like you said, the state board controls this, the board of trustees controls this. They need to know that so they'll know. And like you said, Priva, earlier, you took the time to drive around and make a list of the names. That's research.
In community organizing, we always say, like, you do what you can. There are a lot of people who are chronically ill and can't leave the house, or who have a disability and can't leave the house, or people who have kids and can only do work during this specific time frame. You do what you can. And that is something that needs to be taught to the kids very, very early, to do what they can. And kids organize. Like, we've seen it. We've seen it in March for Our Lives movement. That was a completely student-run situation, mostly high school students, some college students, some as young as middle school, where they organized gigantic marches about gun safety and school shootings. And, they had adults help in situations like, if organizers are under 18, they couldn't get a permit for specific things. But other than that, it was completely run by the kids. So there's energy there, and the kids want to fight for what's right and want to fight to give voices to those who have not been heard, who need to be heard. And so just making sure they have the guidance and the encouragement to do so.
Especially in communities, and it's just kind of registering with me now, communities where there are Black and brown kids, because when I think about those schools that she's mentioning that organized, those were white kids. And so white schools that, that sense of feeling like their voice matters and what they have to say matters, and whatever they have that built into them. And in our communities with Black and brown kids, that needs to be encouraged more. That needs to be pushed into them, or not pushed, proven to them that when they use their voice, that their voice also matters. And so that is the part where it's like, that's a great example, but I want us to make sure that we also are giving that same sort of strength to kids in those Title I schools or the Black and brown schools, so that we can start to see them using their voices to change their communities, and that they see examples of the same kind of things with other kids that look like them.
Yeah. And so back to you do what you can. I can take that several ways. Because for some, personally, and this is just from my standpoint, for some, it can be used as a cop-out, right? It alleviates that's one of those things for some people that they'll say to a person, just do what you can, and leave it at that. Well, sometimes when people come to you with a thing and they're trying to learn and they want something to be changed or want something to be different, it's because they need, like you said, guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people now, children now, are wanting to be in cliques. Or they're not. Now there are a group of people, children that surprise me, and they don't care if they're standing out, if they're the only ones with this thought, hey, this is the research, I did the research, I did this, I know this, and this is what I stand on. There are children like that. The vast majority
Are not.
haven't been taught that and don't want to do it. They ain't trying to stand out by themselves and not trying to, oh, well, my friend won't go with me, that sort of thing. So I really feel like that needs to be encouraged.
Oh, yes.
Social media has, made the whole cliquish, how many people like, view, whatever thing it's made being independent or standing alone very hard or isolated. So I think, unfortunately, our youth, social media has taken over their life. So it does become more about how many can I get to join me? Then let me find something right, and then have people join me because of this. So what I don't know is, and it's because we haven't been in school, usually, when we have those breaks, social media breaks out amongst the kids and it starts issues. I haven't heard of any issues during this time, but I don't know if it's just because I'm not there. So maybe they are figuring something different out. And maybe this time, when that's the only contact you have with somebody outside of your house, has possibly taught them a little empathy or to speak a little more in love or whatever. I'm curious to see how that part plays out in this whole thing.
So I've noticed, so it depends on the social media app that's popular too, how things formulate. When Snapchat was a big thing, there were a lot more issues and things that were popping up, especially with my older students on my campus, that were becoming very cliquey and things like that. With TikTok being the big form of social media, I'm seeing a lot more creativity coming out of my students because they're creating these videos and they want it to look a certain way and have this kind of situation. And so that part's been encouraging to me because they're more willing to stand out and be more individualistic on that platform. And so I can see, and I'm seeing a lot of teenagers who are, dispensing information about, police brutality or, genocides going on in, different countries and, certain situations happening around the world through TikTok, where they're doing a little dance, but then this text bubble pops up that has all this really, really, thought out information about things going on in the world. And that's something that completely surprised me, but also really excites me because the kids are, starting to do that research, and they're also being creative about how they're sharing that information to their peers.
And that's a plus. So I'm eager to see how it all pans out. I have seen videos of children not understanding why I can't go to school, and it not being explained to them in a way that they have grasped it. The other day, I heard a young lady tell her friend, "Oh yeah, by the way, a friend of ours has COVID." And is in ICU, and then went on to say that somebody they knew somebody else went somewhere and brought it back home and somebody passed away, that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's going to be real interesting. Thank you guys for giving me your time today. Oh, who got one that comes from home? What you're saying? Oh, Miss Mimi, that's me. As I stated, socialization starts before structured school settings are for academics, not behavioral development. Homeschooling church community is the way it was, and government sold it out. So now it's a great time for everyone to reassess and come together when COVID-19 has passed.
I think that those days unfortunately have changed where the church was the center of a lot of communities.
Oh, absolutely.
That's no longer the case. So unfortunately, it has fallen. That character development has fallen on the school. It just has. I don't know, right, wrong. If I'm spending more time with, I mean, we spend more time at school than we do at home. I'm a mother and a teacher. I spend more time with my students than I do with my children, because by the time I get home, we have homework time, dinner, whatever. They got to go to bed to get up in the morning. So if I, as a parent, can say someone else is spending more time or is having more of that development opportunity with my own children, then how could we not have that as part of the schoolhouse?
Wow.
It has to be more than academic, because I got your babies more than you do, because somebody else has mine more than I did. It's just what it is. I mean, Monday through Friday, but it's just what it is. We will never take that out of the schoolhouse. It is,
unless we create organizations that can split that responsibility, so that other people in the community, not just the teacher, can fill those needs and those gaps. People who are more suited for meeting the needs, that specific need for children. If there's never can make sure that they get fed, if we can find a way to spin that or get the child over there for those after school meals, that takes that burden off of schools, and then the light bill will go down, and then we can
hopefully somebody will start that, that initiative, because even when I had the young guy on the Obes that was running for the seat he was running for last week, it was like crickets. People didn't want to say anything or get involved, but he gave great information. But anyway, I know there'll be a part 2 to this, probably more than that. But our time is up. Thank you so much, you guys, for
thank you.
Great to see you so much,
Miss Samantha. Now, one last thing, we'll make this real quick. Let's see what time am I at? 5:00 something.
4.
Okay, so one thing, if you had one thing to tell a student, a teacher, a parent, what would it be? Something encouraging, something to make their mind think a little bit more. Drop a nugget. Anybody?
Right now, with virtual learning, every teacher out there is a first-year teacher. Please have patience with your teachers. Teachers, please have patience with your children while they're trying to get on to online systems. We are all in this together. We are all trying to do the best we can, and breathe. Just breathe.
Breathing is essential.
The best advice that I heard that has really gotten me through this training, don't know if it's true, but follow me, come with me on this journey. It is scientifically proven that you cannot cry and drink water at the same time. So whenever you become overwhelmed, have a glass of water. That's my message.
All right.
Listen, I'm gonna try it next time too. LaTreva?
I think I don't have anything profound. Like my therapist has been my best friend, and I will share my mantra that I use for myself. When it's like, I don't know what's going on, this is too much. My mantra for me, and you can take it or leave it, I just look at myself. If I can get a mirror, or if nothing else, I take that good deep breath and I say, girl, you straight. There's no sense in stressing out about whatever is going on, because that's going to take more time away from either finding peace or finding a solution. So you straight.
Yeah, good. So 2 things Miss Iris said, but if everyone keeps pushing their responsibilities to others, teachers can only do so much. Parents are first responsible parties, then extension to community. Ladies, you were great. Teachers don't get paid enough to do it all, and you truly don't. I've always
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Iris.
Thank you for your service, because y'all do. My little tidbit. Oh, where'd it go? Nothing's gonna change if you don't do everything you can to make it happen where you are. So if you want to see change, get involved. The internet is there for a lot of things other than watching somebody twerk, somebody get their butt beat over some other man that wasn't theirs. The internet is there. So if you can't go out, don't want to go out, use it for something other than use it for what it can be used for to help you have a better life. And if not for you, for your children, for your nieces, for the people that come after you, because somebody did it for us. Until next time, it's your girl, Miss Mimi, aka Mimi the Great. Thank you so much for tuning in. You ladies have an awesome Saturday and a great Sunday. Have an awesome day. Hope your school year is totally out the roof. Awesome.